In a world full of darkness, it's time to let the light shine bright. This is Strength to Overcome, where faith and action help us grow through adversity. G'day everyone, welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I am Matt Morton, your host, and I'm excited to be back with you again today for episode 46. Today's episode is going to be a little more personal because I want to talk about something that I've only briefly mentioned before, and that's bankruptcy. And honestly, for a long time, I didn't really want to discuss it publicly for legal purposes and emotionally. And not just because I was trying to hide it, but because when you go through something like that, especially as a man, it can feel like failure. It affects your confidence. It affects your identity, your direction, all of it. But looking back now, with hindsight, I can honestly say that although it felt like one of the hardest seasons of my life, it ended up being something that changed me in ways that I could have never predicted. And strangely enough, it all began with the torn bicep 14 months ago. I have talked about that quite a lot in the opening episodes and throughout this podcast series. But as an overview, when that bicep was torn and it needed immediate surgery, it quickly unraveled the entire plan I had laid out. And I'm okay with the way things have unfolded because it's created a new version of myself, which has been very exciting. But at the time, it created enormous frustration, financial stress, physical challenges, being locked in that brace for 90 days and then developing a frozen shoulder, which I've documented, at which point they said that would take up to 2 years to recover from. Or I may even need surgery or a lot of extra help along the way to get it even closely back to where I needed it to continue on in my career path, which at the time was in my carpentry career. As I went through that process of being debilitated physically, I had to make life-changing decisions for myself, for my family, for my household to be able to survive financially and provide. And sometimes that one event creates a chain reaction that changes everything. So at the time, it was just a physical injury, but it ended up becoming something far bigger than that. Because of the surgery, I wasn't able to work. Because of the frozen shoulder that followed, I wasn't able to do either of my careers. I had to really sit in some silence and listen to what the Almighty wanted me to do. And so I spent a lot of time walking the neighborhood in the mornings and creating a pattern, a groove, while I was also Ubering as much as I was physically able to have some income coming through. And that was humbling. I was trying to hold things together. It came with a level of embarrassment, uncertainty, emotional weight. And that financial collapse creates an identity and self-worth that, while you're going through it, makes you just want to run and hide from having that conversation with anybody. So it was last March that all that injury and surgery and frozen shoulder began to take place around that 14-month mark from today. But it was August of last year, so 5 or so months later, that we decided to pull that ripcord and go down that path, feeling like it was the best option moving forward to preserve a home for our children, some form of foundation to rebuild from. And honestly, at the time, I couldn't see anything good coming from that season. It was shortly after we pulled the ripcord to do that I started having conversations with people back in the fitness business. At the time, I spoke with Crunch out in California, and some really good people out there put together a terrific offer for me, understanding that I was broken and not in a physical position to necessarily lead anyone physically, but I had the leadership and management skills from previously having my own gym for 10 years and being with Crunch in the past to fulfill something that they had a need for. Ultimately, that didn't pan out, and that created a lot of bitterness and frustration for me at the time too, because I started to see that I had some worth. I started to feel like I still had value, and I didn't see myself getting back into the carpentry career due to the frozen shoulder. So I had some discussions out here with Crunch, where I had previously worked as well. And fortunately, they saw the value in me, even though at the time my frozen shoulder was significantly restrictive in being able to demonstrate exercises, lift weights for clients, adjust machines, or even do things for myself. Like opening a jar of peanut butter at the time had become so challenging, it was frustrating. But it did lead me back into the fitness industry, where I recall that first day being back in Crunch class, as they call it. I was humbled. Physically, I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel strong. I had been through the journey of retiring from the fitness industry and doing well financially. So I had a lot of humility, a lot of life lesson moments where I realized I had to almost walk back into Crunch with my tail between my legs. And I was so blessed. I was so welcomed back that it was overwhelming. And I felt the Almighty leading me at that time to be back in a position where I could help clients, trainers, and be in a position where I could work on my frozen shoulder in a gym on a daily basis where I may not have otherwise done so. And so as I fast forward now, for those on camera, you can see I've got a pretty good range of motion on that side. You wouldn't even know that there was an issue. And as I continued to rebuild and get stronger, I felt that this episode needed discussing because the Almighty clearly had a plan for me to be back in the health and fitness industry. And as I have built up a terrific clientele base of wonderful human beings that I've been able to help and guide and learn from, I have seen the Almighty at work and been able to look back at that season where I felt like my life was completely collapsing. And at the time, I couldn't see what that season was redirecting me towards. So I started to feel like I was valued, not just by the Almighty, but by people around me that I was able to help, even in my broken state, because I still hadn't gotten to the point of where my shoulder is today. And that hardship did start to redirect my priorities. It renewed my faith. It led me to an opportunity to be master head coach and influence some of the new hires and people that are just embarking on their career path. And the Almighty certainly put aside these opportunities for me to step into, even though at the time it was all very reluctant. I remember the first day I had to walk into Crunch, and I think I released a reel about it where I pulled up. I was wearing my original jacket that I had, and I tried to walk into the building multiple times, not feeling like I wanted to because of embarrassment, because I had already retired from this industry before and had to come back. I felt scrawny, looked scrawny, was weak, was limited in range of motion. I certainly didn't feel like this was where I was meant to be. And so the Almighty seems to have a great sense of humor, but he also has a level of compassion. Because during that time of trial, physically being broken, financially being ruined, I did spend a lot of time, hands and knees, tears streaming down my face, complete emotional struggle that I poured out at times very angrily, not just at the Almighty, but those around me. And it was almost as if the Almighty was patiently leading me back towards an opportunity where I could help people. And only through the bankruptcy did all of this come about. Because I had to make a decision, and I reached a point of no return where the decisions that I ultimately made pulled me back into a direction where I have the opportunity to grow into whom I believe I am destined to be. And that has been an incredibly challenging, humbling, frustrating journey for me, because there are many times where I do like to self-isolate and hide and battle through things on my own. But instead, through the people that I've had to rub shoulders with, work with, and see on a regular basis, I have learned that this is not the end, but this was a opportunity for a clean slate to rebuild from, which has been incredibly exciting as he has blessed abundantly. And so I've spent a lot of time recently reflecting on a story in the scriptures. It's found in the Bible in Luke chapter 17, and it's the story of the 10 lepers. And the Messiah, Yeshua, he's traveling towards Jerusalem, and all of a sudden he is met by 10 lepers who are yelling at him from a distance, crying out for mercy. Now, you got to understand, back then, and probably even today, leprosy wasn't just a physical disease. These men were completely isolated, rejected. They're forced outside of society. Their identity is completely centered around suffering. And these men are crying out for mercy. And Yeshua tells them, go show yourselves to the priests. Now, what's interesting here is he didn't just heal them. And they were not healed just standing there. Scripture says it was as they went, they were cleansed, they were healed. And that alone to me is powerful, because sometimes healing only happens and restoration can only start to take place when we keep moving forward with faith. not while we're standing still, waiting for that certainty, that answer, that voice that we may not hear. Sometimes it is that first step forward that we have to take. So then the story takes another turn. Out of all 10 that were healed at that moment, only one of them came back. And the Messiah, Yeshua, says, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? And honestly, I think that question still applies to a lot of us today. It applies to me. Because when life falls apart, most people pray. Most people seek the Almighty in pain. Most people cry out during that hardship. But once things improve, once things start to stabilize through healing and clarity, it becomes so easy to move on without the gratitude. And I think this whole season of my life taught me something deeper about that. The torn bicep, the financial collapse, the bankruptcy, the rebuilding. At the time, it all felt devastating. But looking back at it now, I can honestly say that some of the hardest moments of my life ended up redirecting me to my purpose of growth, deeper faith, and helping people in a way I never would have experienced otherwise. And sometimes what feels like complete destruction is actually redirection. Sometimes the blessing only becomes visible in reverse. So wherever you are right now, if life feels like it's uncertain, or it's painful, or it's confusing, my encouragement to you is to hang in there. You may not understand what this season is about or what it's yet to produce, but don't lose your gratitude along the way. And if healing does come, if breakthrough does arrive, and things begin to rebuild, don't forget to return and give thanks. I appreciate everyone being here. Your journey's not over. For some of you, and myself included, the journey is just beginning. This has been Strength to Overcome, episode 46. I hope you have found some value in it. And maybe for those of you that are holding on by a thread, just remember, give thanks, give praise through the journey. Because quite often, when you are at rock bottom, the only place to look is up. And the Almighty is waiting. Stay strong, everyone. I will catch you next week. Cheers.